Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we are going to talk about one of the three realms of keto. We are going to focus probably for the entire month of August on keto itself. This is for people who want to start keto, who want to consider looking into this lifestyle and everything that it entails, and my tips and tricks for doing it as easily as possible.
With every start, we are born again. Open your heart.
Okay guys, so let's talk about where keto even came from. The ketogenic diet was actually being used in ancient Egypt. Unfortunately, I have no internet right now because the storm that came through last night wiped out a whole bunch of everything, and I don't want to quote something that I don't get right. So it was used in ancient Egypt for certain things. It became a thing here in the United States in 1921. Again, I had the doctor's name. I'll put it up over here so I can tell you who it is once I figure it out, once I have internet again. So he invented it, kind of brought it around for epileptic children. That is where the ketogenic diet really came into the forefront, where it even entered into America. So the point of the ketogenic diet was to stop seizures in children specifically. Now, I don't know if this has been proven or if this is just kind of a theory right now, but I believe Amy Berger is one of the ones that's working with everything that the brain deals with. And epilepsy is actually a condition where the brain is starving. It literally is starving because you cannot use carbohydrates for fuel in epileptic people. That's one of the reasons you have such a hard time and why you end up having seizures. So when you go onto a ketogenic diet, you don't run on sugar, carbohydrates, and glucose. You run on ketone bodies. Well, if you have a problem using glucose as fuel in the brain, you can use ketones instead. And that is one of the reasons that an epileptic can go onto a ketogenic diet and do so well, because their brain is no longer starving. It's being fed again. Well, what does that mean for the people who use keto for other things like weight loss and even other mental health properties? What does that look like? When the ketogenic diet was first invented, the macros were for epileptic children. 70% fat, 70 to 90% fat, depending on how bad the epilepsy was. Anywhere from 10 to 20% protein and as few carbs as possible. Well, for these children, their protein intake was only at 1 gram per lean body mass. That is not enough for children. If you have a healthy child who does not have epilepsy, they should be eating 2 to 3 times their protein in grams per lean body mass. So there was a lot of kickback against the ketogenic diet for children, specifically because they came up with things like bone fractures and they had poor bone health, osteoporosis in very young patients. There's a reason for that. They were eating too little protein. Now, I have not done enough research to know whether or not they were eating that little protein because they had to, or because someone pulled the magic number out of a hat and said only do this much. That's exactly where the standard American diet numbers came from. They literally just looked at things and said, hey, let's make it 60%, by grains and carbs, and sounds good. We'll go with it. They literally had no science to back it up whatsoever. I don't know if that's the way it was for the epileptic children, but I do know that all of the things that you hear about the keto diet not being safe for kids, that is where it stems from. So if you are not an epileptic child, there's nothing to say that you have to do 70% fat, 20% protein, and 10% carbs. That is the ratios for the epileptic children. If you do not have those problems, your ratios can change. So if you are going to start a keto diet for the very first time ever, higher fat is actually a really good thing. And that is because your body needs to learn how to use fat as fuel and not carbohydrates. There's something called the keto flu that most people who go into this way of eating, who go to a keto diet, experience. It's fatigue, muscle aches, brain fog, nausea, sometimes even vomiting. That's kind of detox. Anytime you come off of any substance that really honestly isn't good for you, like alcohol, illegal drugs, carbohydrates, their withdrawal symptoms are very similar. It is a drug. Carbohydrates and sugar are a drug, and they actually light up the dopamine receptors in your brain more than many drugs do. So keep that in mind. It's a little bit rough to come off of, and that's why it's so hard to stay away from them, because you want to go back. You get that reward in your brain. Fun fact that we have chemical pathways in our bodies that tell us when we've had enough fat and when we have had enough protein. Why isn't there one that tells us when we've had enough carbs? One, because carbs aren't essential. We can actually make our own glucose. You do not need to consume glucose. Your body can make its own. It has a process called gluconeogenisis, and it takes protein in the liver and it turns it into glucose exactly as much as it needs so that it doesn't get too much. Well, the thing with carbs, and the reason that we can always eat more, there's always room for dessert, especially if it's, a real actual carb-filled dessert, is because our brains trigger us to eat more. Carbs are not usually widely available in nature. The berries that we have now, the fruit that we have now is Franken-fruit. It's not real. That is not the fruit that was first put onto this planet for mankind to eat. That is not the way that it was designed. So what we have now has been crossbred and genetically modified and altered to be bigger, brighter, sweeter, juicier, you name it. Corn, for example. This is modern day corn. And then down here, you have what corn actually used to be. It's a grass. And it had 5, maybe 6 teeny tiny little kernels that were encased in something so hard that you had to use a rock to break it apart. We have completely Frankensteined corn. It is not normal. It is not natural. And because it is so readily available, we don't know when we've had enough. The whole purpose of carbohydrates in nature is to put fat into reserves on your body so that when winter comes and you no longer have fruits, vegetables, and grains available to you, you would be able to live off of your body reserves. You get thin over the winter, then comes the spring and the summer and the fall. And by fall time, you have this huge harvest that's bountiful. There's natural berries and plants and fruits and veggies and everything. Man would eat that when he could, as much as he could, to put on weight, to get fat, to be able to survive through the winter. The problem is we don't have to do that anymore. Everything is readily available at our fingertips at all times. You want strawberries in the dead of winter in Alaska? You can go to the store and get strawberries in the dead of winter in Alaska. That's not normal. And they're not even regular strawberries. Regular strawberries are smaller than your little pinky nail. And they are still available to some extent, but for the most part, you almost never find them. The point of carbs is to make you fat. It literally is the point, so that you have stores for winter. So that's why we don't have a pathway that says you've had enough carbs. We actually have a pathway that says you need more. I want more. That's why it's a reward, because your body needs to store up as much as it can for winter. We don't live in that era anymore. And not to mention the fact that all of the things that we do have now with the grains, the vegetables, the fruit, they've been altered. And now, even if you look at pasta, the wheat has been sprayed with glyphosate, which is a weed killer, and they spray the crops just before they harvest them because it makes them drop everything all at once. And then the glyphosate is still on there. It's in your food. It's still processed. It's in the flour and it disrupts your gut microbiome. It can cause problems with your brain. Then they fortify it with vitamins and minerals that are not natural. They're synthetic. They're added. So they say you need to eat 6 to 11 servings of heart-healthy grains every single day to get your vitamin and mineral content. This is coming from the standard American diet. Well, that's because they don't want you eating meat. They don't want you focusing on protein. Protein is where most of your vitamins and minerals are. So over here, I'll stick up a chart of the nutritional value of different foods. And beef liver is by far one of the most amazing superfoods on the face of the planet. And you can see compared to the other ones. Now, a lot of you aren't real big on beef liver. I'm not real big on beef liver. So let's just take that one out of the equation and let's just go to beef itself. So now we have beef. And beef, if you look at it, is even better than almost everything else except for a few. So let's look at calcium. You know, calcium, who has the highest calcium? Kale. Spinach is really high up there too. So does that mean that you need to eat spinach or kale to be able to get your calcium in because beef just doesn't cut it for the calcium? Here's the problem with, let's say, spinach. Yes, it's very high in calcium, but did you know that it's also very high in oxalates? What do oxalates do? They bind to calcium and then they are shuttled out of your body because oxalates are a toxin and they will bind up all of that calcium that you have just eaten to be expelled with it, or stick it in your kidneys if you're like my husband who has problems with oxalates. So even though you're eating something that has a lot of calcium in it, you're not even able to access it because of the anti-nutrients that are found in those foods. So what do? Eggs. Eggs have great calcium. Cheese, if you aren't dairy free. Cheese and heavy cream, they have good calcium in them. Those are the ones that you want to focus on. So even if you're keto and you want to eat vegetables, that's fine. But do not make them your priority. Your priority actually needs to be protein. Protein is very, very, very important. And for a long time, we've overlooked it. And there's a lot of speculation going around that gluconeogenisis can be forced and is a bad thing. Here's my problem with that. Gluconeogenisis is the process of your liver taking protein and turning it into carbohydrates, glucose. Some people say if you eat 3 pounds of steak, half of it's going to turn into cake. Like literally, there's actually people who are saying this. Here's the problem with this. There is actually a condition. It's called rabbit starvation, like rabbit hopping, little bunny foo-foo. Remember him? It's been a while. Anyhow, rabbit starvation happens when someone is, say, lost in the wilderness and they have no food, they have no supply. So what are they doing? They're hunting rabbits because, well, there's a lot of rabbits in the world. So they live and survive off of just rabbits. Rabbits are extremely lean. They have almost no fat on them at all. So if you're eating 90% protein and you have no carbs and no fat to even go with it, what happens to these people? They actually get sick and die. They can starve to death, gorging themselves on pure protein. The problem is, if gluconeogenesis could be forced by the amount of protein that you are eating, your body would have more than enough protein to turn that into fuel and you would be able to survive. Rabbit starvation would not be a thing if gluconeogenesis could be forced. So everyone who says don't eat too much protein, make sure you keep your protein low, they don't know the science behind it. Now, you may come to a point later on where you are eating too much protein and it is affecting your blood sugars, but that's usually years and years and years down the road. And that's one of those other turns and twists and curves that you need to adjust for, but not in the beginning. When you are starting this in the beginning, you really want to focus on protein. I didn't. So I have really thin hair. Now, granted, I have female pattern baldness on both sides of my family. So I got genetics working against me as well. But when we first went keto, I didn't eat a lot of protein because I focused on the vegetables. I wanted to make sure that I got my 7 to 10 cups of vegetables every single day before I even looked at the meat. That was the way that I was taught originally was the correct way to do keto. And focus on the fats. Make sure that you're taking the fat shots, the MCT oil, and the olive oil shots, and make sure that you're getting all of this in because that's what's important, is fat and veggies. Now, I know better. Had I kept up my protein, there's a good chance that I wouldn't have lost nearly as much hair. I would have lost hair, but that's because any dramatic diet shift is going to cause your body to go a little bit out of whack. And things are going to happen, but it wouldn't have continued for a whole year. It is what it is. I am now 41 years old. I'm not going to start growing back a whole bunch of new hair follicles when I starved my body of that protein for such a long time. It is coming back to an extent. It is filling in a little bit. But it is what it is. Had I known differently, I wonder what would have happened. I really don't know. So, the things to focus on when you are starting keto for the very first time, you need to understand that you are going to go through withdrawals. You are going to have the keto flu to some extent. Some people get it really badly, other people don't. You need to pay close attention to how much protein you are getting. Prioritize protein over everything else. Fat is a lever. You get to decide how much fat you're going to include. For me, with my mental health, I need to be on the higher side of fat. I'm probably around 60% fat most days. Sometimes upwards of 70. It just really depends. Whereas I know many people who thrive way down where it's at 50%, if even 50% fat by volume or by calories. And they do wonderfully there. When you first start, I do recommend being on the higher side of the fat. You can go ahead and start with the 70% fat until your body learns to use that as fuel so that there's an overabundance of fuel. So it goes, okay, we have no choice but to burn this stuff. Let's figure out how to make it work. Once you're adapted and you're fat adapted, then you can start to back down off of the fat once you stall. It takes some people weeks, months, years before they stall. So you can stay at that high fat, whatever you are doing. If it's working, stick with it. If it's not, it's time to tweak a little bit. And that's usually the first thing that I suggest is, okay, back off the fat a little bit. As for carbs, carbs are always a limit. You really need to try to stay under a certain amount. For some people, it's 50 grams per day. And I'm talking about total carbs. This includes your vegetables. Don't subtract out your fiber. So for some people, they can do 50 grams. I hate to break it to you. Most of us can't do 50 grams. Most of us can't hardly do 20 grams. And that's just the way that it is. What you want to get out of your journey is completely up to you. If you want to be more strict about it and you want to see faster results, then you really do need to stay below 20 total grams of carbs every single day. Now, does that mean you're going to have to do it forever? Not necessarily. You may be someone who can go up to maybe 30 carbs or maybe 40 carbs without any negative side effects once you have lost your weight. But don't expect to be able to lose weight and get fantastic results if you're eating like that now. That's a choice you have to make. I can't tell you what's going to work best for you without you trying and seeing what you can figure out. So that kind of wraps up where the ketogenic diet started, what it was originally invented for, what the macros even look like for someone who is starting. Then you got to decide from there what is going to work best for you. What I'm going to do for the rest of the month for August is the recipes that I post. I'm actually going to do keto meals with side dishes and main courses and give you an idea of what it would look like for your family to be keto, or even if it's just you can still feed them some healthy stuff, and half the time they don't even know that it's healthy. So that is my plan for the recipes for this month. And then I'm going to talk some more about the science and give you some more tips and tricks on being keto. By the time you guys see this, I will actually be on the road to go and pick up Cassidy and Noah. And it's time for them to come back here. So super excited about that. Prayers for safe travel would be fabulous. Yeah, I think that about wraps up everything. Anyways, thanks so much, guys, for stopping in. Please do all of the things. And thank you for supporting us and following us along on our journey. Let me know down below if you have any specific questions about keto, about things that you've heard. Oh, and one more thing. Seriously, stay away from the keto products. If it says keto on it, be very, 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 very wary, because chances are it's just a company trying to make a profit off of something that they can't beat. So please be very careful with keto products. Okay, that really is everything. So I will show you the kids as soon as we get them, and we will see you guys on the way. Bye. Okay, so we have no bloopers. I'm editing in the hotel room and I have no bloopers. So we're gonna make a blooper. Is that a blooper? Wait, who's that? Is that your new kitty that you just got? Jessica Cat.
Just a cat.
Just a cat.
My
just
name
a cat.
is Just a Cat.
Yes, it's just Bella and I in the hotel this time. Oh,
And Kitty.
and Kitty. I can't forget about just a cat. Kitty. There's something else we should tell everybody. Should we tell everybody?
Yeah.
Look at Mommy's new cup.
Mommy got a new cup. And it's
Mommy just found out she's gonna be a Nana. Huh?
and
Are you gonna be Auntie Bella?
yes.
Yeah, are you gonna be Auntie Bella?
But
Is Kaden and Maddie gonna have a baby?
yes.
Yes, they are. That's gonna be the first one, huh?
And I want to see it.
And Jessica wants to see it. Anything else?
That's all.
That's all, folks.